I think I can trust some politicians, but only during the campaign when they promise, all that stuff. But after the elections, I know that all that was untrue.
It's been borne out by so many things that I've said in the past. For example, the war in Iraq, so many other things over the years. Most of it is I just let it go over my head because it's invariably you can't believe what they say.
Well, they have to make compromises, with other parties. And if you promise this as a party, and another party promises this, it's going to end up in the middle somewhere, if you're lucky. And that's when it comes to action at all. Most of the time it's usually talking, huh?
I think politicians have a way of trying to tell the truth sometimes, but in most cases there's something they're hiding behind. In other words, you will always find that there is something that they tell you which is not right or is not correct, or maybe you don't believe it.
A couple of times I saw in the past, Parliament, and the discussion, I find it very civilized. They just talk to each other. And I like the English Parliament, actually.
Okay. I think it's good.
I think so. They're very civilized people. They talk to each other. They discuss. They don't fight. And it's just a very modern, civilized, liberal way. So democratic.
Trust them at all, especially in Poland. They say different things, they do different things. And, democracy in Poland is not like in Britain, hundreds of years. It's just 17 years. But I think, the standards of politics are very much different than here. People just don't trust politicians. They just don't. Sometimes they believe them, during the campaigns, but they don't trust them after 5 days after the elections.
Many of them, I think, in politics for their own advantage. They are trying to make a career and name and money for themselves. Maybe some of them do care for people, but I don't think those who are on a very, very top really into people. They are more in themselves and into politics, playing the game of politics.
Well, Hillary Clinton's gas tax for the summer, that was obviously a gimmick. And maybe it wasn't so much that I read through it on my own, but all the pundits talking about it convinced me that it was. But I saw Barack Obama when he did his interview a couple weeks ago on MSNBC with Tim Russert, and he was talking about how his dad and his wife's dad and Tim Russert's dad, a generation ago, they could work hard and achieve things, but the same people working as hard today in the same jobs can't achieve as much in the States anymore. And that he seemed so genuine when he was saying that, and the way he was talking and how he made it personal, that wasn't a gimmick. But Hillary Clinton saying, I empathize with you and the price of gas is just, no she doesn't. She never pays for gas. So.
Politicians, that they have to be example, and for example, our president is not an example now.
Sarkozy is not a bad example?
He's a really bad example.
Why?
Because
his personal life, or
yeah, but the first evening, after the first evening he was the president, he went to something like I don't know, a hype place,
okay.
And with the show business, and that is not the representation of the people. I mean, it's just the upper class, and he wants to have fun and power. And
really, I trust them, but every time I saw them on TV, I remember that it is TV, and not everything is true. Really, we have two kinds of true. One, for example, Russian true, one American true, and they are not absolutely the same.
They are threatening so-called freedom of free speech. I mean, free speech. That's a very fundamental tenet of Western democracy, they say. And I don't believe in. I mean, it's a spin all over. I mean, you read Noam Chomsky's Media Control. It's fantastic. It gives you the better idea what media is all about.
The media has a lot of. I think the media is following. Here in this country, I think the media is really following the government. That's what I think. Do they have a free say? I'm not sure about that.
What we call a mediocrity. I mean, that says, well, media is important, and well, politicians live through the media. We see politicians only on TV, and we read about them in the papers and stuff. and they get represented in the papers and on TV every day. So they need to have the same story, day in, day out. Because if you tell one thing on Tuesday and another thing on Wednesday, well, there goes confidence whatsoever at all.
The majority of the written press in this country is owned by one person, Rudolf Murdoch, and whatever his interests are, people are gonna whatever his interests are, the governments are gonna follow that line because he's got the populist press, the Sun, the Times, etc. And then he can print whatever he wants. Don't support this government, and people generally, I suppose, follow along that line.
I think they definitely play a role in how they portray things. I mean, even as regards just photos that they put in newspapers or AOL.com is always putting the most ridiculous pictures of politicians that make them look like it's just unattractive. And when I think people, they look at that and how the politician presents themselves, and they bank on that a lot. But even more so, just what stories get prioritized, like front page stories versus the 8th page. Like that makes a lot of a difference too.
Media, I don't know in your country here, but in my country, I think the media, really, has influence over what the politicians are saying. In most cases, the politicians will come up with some, almighty good, thing that they believe in, and maybe the people don't believe in it, and then the media comes in also and try and push them to clarify what they said, and sometimes they change.
Well, it's quite complicated because on the one hand, people don't trust business, private companies because they perceive them as, something very bad, that, the cause of the corruption. But I think it's okay when business cooperates with the country, but the rules have to be very clear. So the rules have to be set. I think that's the most important thing.
Okay.
Governments basically serve are the purpose of. I mean, we live in a capitalist environment. And governments invariably serve big business, don't they? That's the object of the exercise, to serve big business and to do basically the policies that's what they want. As opposed to what the common man wants. Yeah.
A lot of politicians, do have some interest, even if it is not in the open, it is hidden. And look at, the best politicians that you've seen anywhere in the world. They always are not all that poor people. They have something that either push them into being in politics or getting into politics to protect.
Should be, but there are most that I think I'm a leftist, and but I believe that the rightists they first believe in the power of money, then they want to they represent the power of money. Then I think that there's still something different between right and left.
Yeah, of course. If they're not serving the people, I mean, Tony Blair got 21% of total electorate. That means 79% don't want him. So, and he is democracy, and they call it democracy. And well, they're serving corporate companies. Shell in Nigeria, for example, has its own security in a sovereign country. They're running their own security, and their own. I mean, it's just one specialized class of people they're serving, and they're part of it, part and parcel of it, and they make profits.
Politics, but again for a personal gain. A lot. I think the main thing for them is to keep power in their own hands. Like Medvedev succeeded after Putin. Everything was arranged, and Putin will be prime minister now. Or this is what they say. He doesn't want to lose power. He still wants to have his board and continue the policies, because if he is out of power completely, then he will lose everything, the money, power. I mean, he's out of the picture.
I think there's a lot of motives, for politicians, to be aware of. I mean, I don't know, money. Money is always a thing. I mean, we get stories of our Prime Minister, Balkenende, I mentioned him before. I mean, we said, yes, okay, let's go to Iraq. And then a day afterwards, we discovered that the brother of our Prime Minister has an oil company in Iraq. what does it say about his decision whether not to go or not?
It's corruption.
Yeah. It's like corruption, but they always, have their way of telling him, twisting the story so that it's not corruption. That's the thing. But it's examples like that well, makes it not trust them anymore. Yeah. At least not blindly trust them. I mean, that's the thing.
Well, the economists have everything. I mean, they make the world turn around. That's what it is. And basically, they are putting the pressure on politics. That's what it is. I mean, Sarkozy decided to change and to make France grow and everything. But I mean, the last thing that was the Mittal, the merging of Mittal and another big group, French group. And people were going on strike for that also because you had so many people losing their work because Mittal decided to just fire half of them. And so I think it's playing a big part. I mean, you want them in France, fine. We are buying you over, fine. But I mean, you follow what we are saying. So basically, yes, economics is all about.
I don't think really Russian businessmen are very humanistic or people-oriented. I don't think so at all, because it is so new to Russia, all this freedom, and from coming from the communistic years, the image that people have about West, it's that in the West people all about money, all about playing games, and so they are literally taken after the image they have,
which is wrong,
of the West, which is very, very wrong.
When they really fall through, I think it's because they promise something impossible. Like going back to Hillary Clinton's gas tax, there was no way she was going to get that through Congress. There was absolutely no way. So when she says it, she convinces people that she can do it, but she can't. She knows she can't. Everyone who is knowledgeable about the system knows she can't. So that's just when they're lying, really. So they've gotten themselves into that mess. Otherwise, I don't know. I mean, politics is politics. It's its own world. When they say things, who knows what they're really thinking, or I mean, the world can change so drastically.
I think it's important for people to trust their politicians. I mean, the danger is that if people doesn't trust anymore their politicians, then it can become very dangerous. Then I prefer to trust them, even if I know that many of them are interested more in power than the people. But
yeah, alternative is that we have to devise a human system. I mean, that cares about the human beings. And I mean, of course, democracy in its principle is right, but at the same, the way it is being implemented. And the globalization, the mass murderous globalization. I mean, globalization is fantastic. I'm pro-globalization, pro-capital markets, but the way they are being handled. I mean, these things are being handled. That's the problem. Look at the banks. I mean, they privatize profits and socialize losses.
If John McCain wins, it's going to be disastrous, at least as regards our Supreme Court, because I think one of our justices is over 80 and a couple will be over 70, and so they're either looking at retirement or death, really, and he'll be able to appoint them. And I fear for the overturning of Roe versus Wade. I really do. I think that who McCain associates himself with, sociopolitically, his pastors that he's gotten endorsed by, and that kind of thing, is really dangerous for us. It really is. I'm not so much up on his economic policy. I do know about the war. That will be a disaster too. So it's going to definitely make a difference whether it's Republican or Democrat.
In fact, I do believe that there can be someone who can represent new ideas. Then I do trust the system in the way that it can evolve. It can change.